Hello and Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to In This Moment podcast. I am Zumar Ali, your host for this episode. In this episode, meet our guest, Asmaa Hussein, the author of A Temporary Gift and Place of Refuge, published by Ruqayya's bookshelf, her own publishing house. She will guide you on how to navigate through your feelings when grief and loss hurt you. We hope this can be an opportunity for you to be in the moment, disconnect from the chaotic and confused world.
In this moment.
Today, we are joined with the author of the book titled A Temporary Gift and A Place of Refuge. Two books that are beautifully written based on the author's experience and reflection of her life. So I would like to welcome Sister Asmaa Hussein all the way from Toronto to your first ever Twitter Space session today. So how are you, Sister Asmaa?
Thank you so much. I'm well, alhamdulillah. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. This is the first time I've ever been on Twitter Space or even realized there was such a thing as Twitter Space.
yes.
So no, I'm really looking forward to it, and also hopefully hearing some feedback from the listeners as well.
Yep. And what are you up to these days? You have new books coming, or what are you really working on currently these days?
These days I'm working mostly on children's books.
Mm.
I would love to someday write another book for adults, but I find that the books that I write are very emotionally heavy. And sometimes you just have to be kind of in the right headspace to be able to access those emotions again. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So,
Yep,
but maybe
definitely.
someday, inshallah.
Inshallah. And I really love your two books. So I really hope that you'll write another a sequel to Place of Refuge. So yes, Sister Asmaa Hussein with us tonight is the author and is an author and also the CEO of her own publishing house called Ruqayya's Bookshelf. The company has published many books, including her own, as well as like she said just now, she also published children books mostly. You can check out all of the books on her company's official website at ruqayyasbookshelf.com. And today we'll be talking about when grief and loss hurt you. But before we move on to the topic, I'd like to briefly introduce Imam Plus to everyone who is here, and also to our speaker, Sister Asmaa. When I introduced her, where I was from, I'm from Imam Plus. So Imam Plus is actually a digital imprint of content and publishing house known as Iman Publication. And Iman Publication publishes a range of books from spiritual books to self-help books. And we have a sister company called Iman Shop Bookstore, that is Iman, IMAN, Shop, SHOPPE, Iman Shop Bookstore. And the company responsible for selling many great books such as The Temporary Gift and A Place of Refuge, written by our guest, Sister Asmaa Hussein. And as a digital imprint, Imam Plus makes digital content such as this session that you're tuning in right now. And also, we produce online classes that are complementary to the books that we published in Iman. You can check out our website at imanplus.com to browse all of our online classes that we offer. So for tonight's topic on when grief and loss hurt you, I would like to share with you that if you have any questions about grieving, about any experience that you're encountering before, that you're facing right now, you lost somebody that really dear to your life. If you have any questions you want to ask Sister Asmaa, you may request to speak. And inshallah, I like to speak with Sister Asmaa directly, and I think she'll be very happy to answer your questions, inshallah. To put this conversation in context, I'm sure that everyone knows that griefs and losses are a part and parcel of life. We will always be subjected to these two situations because we are really weak beings. We cannot do anything except what Allah has decreed and allows to happen. But even then, we still struggle to accept this fact. And in this process of struggling to accept this fact, we hurt ourselves in the process. We blame pretty much everyone for leaving us. We blame ourselves for not doing better. And worse, we blame Allah in the end for putting us in those situations. So we hope that we can find some answers, and we hope that we can find peace to answer our question tonight. That is, when griefs and losses make our heart hurts, how do we find peace in the midst of the grief and losses, inshallah? So to start off, Sister Asma, I'd like to talk about the book that you wrote before, A Temporary Gift and A Place of Refuge. These two books were written based on what happened in your life, the reality of your life. So this is a very intimate book, very, I think, something that really close to your heart. If you can share with us, how was the journey writing those two books that really makes you vulnerable to the readers? And if you can tell us briefly about those two books, what are they all about?
That's a great question. I think it's funny. A friend of mine actually asked me the same question several years ago when my first book was coming out, A Temporary Gift. And she said, "Isn't it so hard to write this?" And my answer to her was, it would be harder to not write this. For me, my way of processing my thoughts and my emotions has always been writing. Ever since I was a teenager, up until now, this is the way that I make sense of the world, through writing. And so it was only natural that when this big thing happened and my husband passed away, I experienced such chaos of emotions all happening at once. And the only way for me to really make sense of them was to write them down so that I can see the words on a physical page and say, okay, I can deal with this, or I can move forward knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a plan. You know what I mean? And so having the words in front of me really helped me make sense of what I was going through. I have had many different emotions over the years with regards to how much about me is out there, because everyone wants some semblance of privacy in their lives, and I have struggled with it because the books, A Temporary Gift and A Place of Refuge, they do talk about things that are very personal, and thoughts and feelings and emotions and reflections that are very, like you said, intimate, personal, things that many other people in the world go through, but perhaps never vocalize or never write down. And there are times when there is some level of discomfort with it, but I always push past it because I know that, and historically, the people who have read my work and who have come and talked to me and sent me messages and emails and texts about how much they connected to my work precisely because I was able to be that vulnerable, that makes me realize that even if I have to put myself in a situation that's not always 100% comfortable, I'm okay with it for the greater good. That being said, I still make sure in my life to keep private things private, so I do express a lot. I express a large range of emotion. I talk about, my experiences and stuff, but there are certain things in my life that I've always kept private and will always remain private. And I think that's important, especially for anyone who wants to share these kinds of things in more of a public forum, that there are things that you choose in your life that you make sure no one has access to. And so you don't feel like you are overexposed. Does that make sense?
Yep, definitely. Thank you. Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Sister Asma. So, for context, everyone, probably you haven't heard about these books of hers, A Temporary Gift and A Place of Refuge. So, these two books are based on Sister Asma reflection and also experience of her life. A Temporary Gift is about, it's actually a journal, probably, Sister Asma. It's a journal, actually. It's the
It's
compilation of entries. Yep,
yeah, yes. So it's more the genre, if you want to call it, it's a memoir.
right. So it's a memoir of her try to reflect on the passing of her beloved husband in the tragic accident, and also A Place of Refuge is where she's trying to find the strength and to maintain her I think the spiritual strength after she had passed through the traumatic event. Is that correct? If I can I put that way?
No, absolutely, absolutely. I think the first book, A Temporary Gift, was really me dealing with the initial shock of losing my husband in a violent way. So he was shot. So that book I find to be a lot more intense, emotionally intense. And then A Place of Refuge is several years later, um, continuing to make sense of everything that happened and trying to forge a path forward through the connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Mashallah. Thank you, sister. And Sister Asma, so when you wrote these two books, you must probably figure things out that grieving of a losses is always a way to acknowledge our state of emotion. It's a way that human can actually make sense of our state of emotion. When we grieve, that's how we respond to the loss, to the emotion that we are having right now. And you also have your fair share of grieving periods when you lost your husband, like you wrote in the book Temporary Gift. If you don't mind, I'm asking, can you walk us through the grieving period briefly, just to know that how you actually really cope with the emotions during those periods?
Absolutely. It's funny when you say walk us through the grieving period because I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I was done. I didn't realize I was done. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize, that when something like this happens in your life, um, grief is ongoing. And of course, people talk about grief like it's waves of an ocean. You have a very strong wave, and then the ocean gets calm. And then after some time, another wave comes. And sometimes the waves are stronger and sometimes they're weaker. And over time, the waves get farther and farther apart, but they don't disappear forever. And depending on what you go through in life, it can reignite a lot of that grief, especially if you have not processed it or dealt with it. And I'm not saying that I have, because I think that I probably haven't. Um, but that's just one perspective I want to put out there. But of course, I would say the first year was the hardest year of my life. And then, the second year also. And over time, things do get easier just because time has passed and you've accumulated other experiences, and you've had other friendships, relationships with your family, and you move forward whether you want to or not. But in that first period, um, honestly, I think it's hard to even think about because it was such a dark period for me. But the thing that really kind of kept me going, kept me alive, was the Quran and dua. Because for me, the Quran, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it in the Quran, that in these words, and I'm not quoting, but there's healing. He says it very clearly, like shifa, like healing for what is in the heart. And so it's so clear, like this is medicine, and we're given it. We're given this book as medicine. And so in that first year, I remember just every day reading as much as I could, just because in the moments where I was reading and my mind was in those words, I wasn't having to feel all the emotions. I was in something else. And then and of course, the Quran is beautiful. The examples that are in the Quran of prophets and righteous people who went through so much and how they maintained their patience, all of these were things that reminded me that I also had the capacity to maintain my faith and to remain patient. And then on top of that, I would say dua, because, and I often think about like the story of Prophet Yusuf, Prophet Yaqub. There's always a statement. I think so. Most of us know it. The statement of, "I only complain of my grief and sorrow to Allah." That's what Prophet Yaqub said when his son, his son went missing, who's missing for decades. Um, and there's a lot of freedom in being able to express yourself without filters to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we know that we do have to have filters when it comes to expressing ourselves to people. Like people can only take so much. People can only handle so much. But not only that, we also don't want to complain about Allah to people. That's not a good path to go down. Whereas Prophet Yaqub literally said, "I complain to Allah." And so, like, Allah gives us this avenue where we can say everything without filter. We can cry. We can tell Allah, like, I'm so frustrated, I'm so angry, I'm confused, and there is no judgment that comes from Allah, because that relationship is the one that we are supposed to foster, and that is the relationship, the only relationship in our existence that has 100% clarity, and that in that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything about us. He's closer he already knows before we even say anything. He already knows everything. And so there is a level of comfort in turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and just being able to really relieve the pressure in your chest by saying everything, and then seeing in your own life what that means. Seeing like the miracles that come into your life, the accomplishments that you're able to have, the dreams, the amazing dreams that you have, like in so many facets. That relationship with Allah, when you really foster it, you find great comfort in it, and you also see the ramifications on your own life.
Thank you
Oh,
very much.
I do want to mention one more thing. I always
Yes.
forget this, and it's very quick, but having good company is like, cannot be overstated. Having people in your life who are going to be with you, who physically be with you, empathize, keep you company, remind you of Allah in your low moments, who are going to take care of you, who come and bring food, who come and take care of your kids. Those people also are a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we should know that we were not created as islands. We were not created to deal with life events on our own. We were created in community, in families, friends. And it's so important to access that community when we really need it.
Thank you, Sister Asma. So now everyone knows that the grieving period can be really, really long. So from what Sister Asma just told us just now, it took probably she's not even has overcome the grief, but she's trying hard to live her life and be a better servant by looking for answers in the Deen, in the Quran and Dua. And I like to perhaps offer to everyone who is listening right now, we offer this online class called Presence of the Heart, which actually will help you to find the center of your life in the Deen. And we have several speakers in the online class, such as Sheikh Mikhail Smith, and we have Ustazah Zainab Talha, and those speakers will try to help you how you can find actually a way to become closer to the Deen and make sense of whatever is happening in your life. You can get the online class on our website, actually, imanplus.com. And you can use this online code YESYES when you check out, which you can get a discount, 8 ringgit off from from the original price of the online class. So you please go to imanplus.com. Following up to those answers just now, Sister Asma. So when you reflect back on your journey on the grieving period of your life, it sounds like you make it sound very, very easy, that perhaps we don't know how you really face through those periods. Have you ever actually questioned why Allah put you in that situation, or perhaps you feel that you're not it's unfair for you? You're trying to build a life with your husband, and suddenly things happen. And yes, have you ever actually asked Allah or questioned Allah on that?
I have, if I'm being honest, and I don't write about this, and I don't express this anywhere on social media, because we know that intrinsically, if we have tawakkul and we have faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we intrinsically trust that whatever happens to us is good for us in some sense, even if we don't understand it, even if we never understand it, as painful as it is. And we know this without a doubt. But still, we're human, and we still struggle, and sometimes I still think, well, why did I have to go through this? Why couldn't I just have kind of that regular family life? You get married, you have children, you kind of live that nuclear family dream that everyone aims towards, or most people aim towards. I have questioned it a lot in my mind. I've tried very hard not to verbalize it to people, because I know that it comes with faith ramifications, that you're questioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I never want to go down that path. However, in my own kind of complaining to Allah, if you want to keep it in that frame of reference, like I said, I don't have filters. Or I mean, I have filters, but I've tried very hard to not have filters, because I know that when I keep things in and I don't have any kind of outlet, they affect me, and I see the effects in me, even in my physical body, and it's something very interesting how when we suppress what we feel, it actually ends up showing up in our bodies as illness, pain, whatever you want to say about that. That's something that I'm kind of realizing now, many years later. But I do question it. I mean, I am human, right? And it is hard to deal with sometimes, especially, when I was talking about grief, it's like waves, right? The water can be calm for a long time, months, and then you get hit with a wave and you're like, why, I wish it wasn't like this, or why did it have to be like this? But those are thoughts and words that I believe should be spoken to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not to people. Because when you speak about them to people, it snowballs into something that is not healthy for our faith.
Right. Wow. That's very beautiful. Thank you, Sister Asma, on that reminder. And actually, I believe you when you say no filters. I follow you on Instagram, and you pretty much share a lot of. I mean, you share reflections of what happened in your daily life, and it's really amazing and inspiring as well. Okay, let's talk about the social media life a bit. So I noticed you always tell people in your social media posts that you have to feel the pain, to feel the sadness, acknowledge those feelings, and do not ever disregard these feelings. And you really educate that actually feeling the sadness is a part of healing. My question is probably the why. Why do you think that it's really important for us to acknowledge these feelings? And a bigger question, probably, what can we do as a community to educate people the importance of acknowledging this pain instead of just encouraging people, be strong, be positive. This is just that. This is going to pass somehow, sometime later. So how do we actually balance this, Sister Asma?
That's a great question. I think that there is a balance, and I still think it's important for us to tell people, be strong, be patient. This is going to pass. Like all of those positive reminders are still important. Like we're not ever advocating for people to just sit in their pain and feel, oh, this is going to go on forever and I'm never going to feel better and this is just my life now. Like almost like you become despondent. You wave the white flag, I guess, and just say, this is my life now. Never advocating for that, because I think that feeling your pain and feeling your sadness should not lead to a place where you become hopeless, because that's not the purpose. The purpose is to feel it and to really to to really feel it such that you understand it. Unfortunately, what a lot of us do, even me, when we feel uncomfortable feelings, whether it's sadness, grief, anger, frustration, we're not curious about it. We're not asking ourselves, why am I feeling this right now? Where is this coming from? This and if you lose a loved one, it becomes very obvious. Okay, yeah, it's coming from this because I lost somebody. But as the years go on, sometimes we feel sadness or these uncomfortable emotions, and we want to brush them away because they are uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable for us, and they're uncomfortable for the people around us. But the more you live, the more you realize that uncomfortable feelings and sadness and grief and anger and frustration are tools. Well, first of all, they're indicators that something is going on. And if we don't pay attention and we don't sit with it, we will never know what's actually going on inside of us. That's number one. And number two, after they're indicators, they are tools. And I say this a lot, that when you are sad or when you're in a state of grief or pain, you can use that state to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have so many examples of that in the Quran. Like, again, coming back to this, it's the story that I always go to, the story of Prophet Yaqub, who was in pain and grief for so long. And it was like the story is there, and what he said is there in our book because it's an example to us that he was sad for this long, for so long. Some scholars say it was 40 years until he saw his son again. And like, when we feel these things, we can either push them away, deny them, distract ourselves, which is what is the comfortable thing to do, or we can sit with them and feel them and use them to better our worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because when we are sad and we raise our hands to Allah and we cry to Him and we seek comfort in Him, that automatically is improving our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our strengthening our faith. And so that's why when I say you have to feel what you need to feel, it's not just because we have to process our emotions to actually walk through them, right? Although that is a big portion of it. It's also because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala causes us to feel these emotions. And He created us to feel a wide variety and a wide array of emotions. Why? Because like, it's almost like I want people to embrace their humanity in a way that actually brings them full circle closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because when we feel these uncomfortable feelings, and I'm sorry, I know I'm just like blabbing on, but when we feel these uncomfortable feelings and we seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that relationship is just strengthening and strengthening, and it's going to lead to something amazing. And that's why I think it's a mistake to ignore what we feel and just kind of push it away and distract ourselves.
Right. Thank you, Sister Asma, on that. I'd like to remind everyone that you can ask questions to Sister Asma directly through this space. So Don't be shy if you have any questions about whatever that you have doubt in, whether about the book, about the grieving period that you're having. So you could please just request to speak by pressing the button at the bottom left on your screen. There's a microphone button. You press that, and inshallah at the end of the session later, I'll give you the chance to ask question to Sister Asma, inshallah. Or alternatively, you can also tweet your questions to the tweet that I think I already tweeted before. So you can drop your questions by replying to that tweet, and we'll choose the question later, inshallah. Early part of this conversation just now, Sister Asma, you mentioned about turning back to Allah when you in pain, and not really exposing your pain to your friends, to the people that in your circle, because that is something that we were told by the sheikh, by the ustazah, about to turn back to Allah when we feel sad. But we cannot disregard the fact that humans actually are a social being, and Allah places so many people around us, so that we can learn from each other, be it our friends, our family members. So my question probably about how do we navigate through this pain by relying on other people, but also keeping in mind that Allah is always there to help us. How can we avoid pushing other people when we are struggling with our pain? Have you ever actually pushed anyone in your life, and when you are struggle with your grief, with your losses?
You mean, have I ever pushed anyone away?
Yep, exactly.
Is that?
Yep.
I wouldn't say I've pushed people away. I would say, however, that I did have relationships with friends who I felt unfortunately became a little bit uncomfortable with my level of grief. And maybe didn't quite know how to approach it, didn't quite know how to really sit with me in that pain. And that did put a little bit of distance between us. And I, it's not something that really upsets me or anything. I think that while that happened, I also had relationships that gained a lot of depth and gained strength that wasn't there before, because they were able to be there for me. And I really appreciate that. Until now, those people who were with me in the initial shock and the initial moments of pain, and the few months and even years following, those to this day are still the closest people to me. And I think that's kind of the marker of how a relationship, or how deep a relationship is, if that person can be with you and can stand with you in the darkest of moments. But it is a balance, I would say, between relying on people for comfort and for assistance and for reminders and for love, and then at the same time making sure that you're relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, number one. And then also being careful about what you're saying, right? That was a big thing for me, being careful about what I was saying to my friends. Of course, I think it's so important to talk to your friends about how you're feeling, your sadness, your grief. I don't know what I'm going to do now. What's the way forward? All of these thoughts that come into your head, it is healthy. At the same time, I was always very careful about, what I mentioned before, not complaining about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like in the sense that I wouldn't go to my friend and say, why did Allah have to do this to me? Or what did I do to deserve this? Or, well, now my life is just going to suck because this happened. Like just kind of watching what you're saying, because all of these statements are really powerful and they're really negative. And I don't think it's negative to express deep pain and grief and loss, but I think that we always have to be careful about how we speak about Allah. That's really where the limit is, because the last thing that we want is for this pain and this grief to affect our faith. But one of the other things that I would say is that, I think when people go through very difficult times, if they're able to access a therapist, especially a Muslim therapist, but even a non-Muslim therapist, if they're able to do that, I would highly, highly, highly recommend it.
Mhm.
And the reason I'm recommending it is because I didn't do it. I didn't do it early on. For whatever reason, I thought that no, I can handle this on my own. I thought, yes, I'm processing it through writing. I had a lot of thoughts on this. But over the years, I've realized, and quite recently, I've realized that there's actually a lot of things that I would have benefited from had I spoken to a therapist and expressed my grief and expressed my thoughts, um, to someone, in the darkest moments, so that I could gain the tools to really move forward constructively. Um, I cannot overstate this. I think there's still, unfortunately, somewhat of a taboo in our communities. I think it's a lot less now than it was even 5 or 10 years ago. However, it's still there, and I can't stress enough. I'll be honest with you, I'm in therapy right now, and this is many, 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 many years after losing my husband. But I got to a point where I recognized, you know what, there are still some things that I thought I had processed, but I haven't. And I need to make sure that I'm taking care of myself in that way. Um, and I just need to highly recommend it to everyone who's going through this. And unfortunately, for a lot of us, it's really not accessible financially. It tends to be very expensive, which sucks. It really sucks because I think this is so important. But yeah, I think prioritize yourself, prioritize your wellness, and know that if you don't deal with grief, it's gonna come back. It's gonna keep coming back over and over and over. And that's just the reality. And unfortunately, sometimes it comes back in ways that you're not gonna like, or even in the form of physical illness. And it is that serious, and I think we really need to shine a light on it. Unfortunately, in the past, a lot of the times we've been told, just don't speak about it and just be patient. And I don't think that's right.
Yep. Thank you, Sis Asma, for the answer. I really, really also hope that everyone. I think the relying on other people like therapists in making sense of our grieving is really helpful. And I really want to bring the point about you have a daughter with you right now. Have you ever talked and walked her through your grieving process with her, and how do we actually find comfort as well with our family members when we are in this phase of grieving?
Yes, I definitely have spoken to her about it. My daughter and I have a very open relationship in terms of how we speak about our feelings. And so my husband passed away when she was only 9 months old, and so she really doesn't have any memories of what happened, or her dad or anything. That being said, I always fostered in her the knowledge that, like that she had a father, and I would show her pictures and talk about him. And from a very early age, she had a concept of death, like that. He's not with us anymore, but he loves us so much. And we've always had that open relationship in terms of talking about her dad. And even till now, I can go to her and tell her, I just feel sad. I feel sad because I miss Baba. And she will tell me, I feel sad too. And just
Mhm.
for me, that relationship is really important, to just be able to express, in a way that is okay for me to express to her. I can't, of course, would not express every little facet of my grief, or anything like that, because it wouldn't be age appropriate for her.
Mhm.
Nor has she read my books or anything like that, right? That's too, that's several years down the line, but that's important. And I think what I try to foster with her is that openness so that she can come to me and express to me how she's feeling about, not having her dad around and all these things. And she does. And she like, I see the effects of how I've raised her. I'm seeing them now, and that she's very open, sometimes to my detriment. She's very open about like everything that she feels and stuff like that, which is kind of difficult sometimes, but I'm really glad that this is kind of the path that she's going down. Um, and then I forgot your second question, the question about how do we form those relationships with our family,
Yep.
or kind of lean on our family.
Yep. When
I
you're
think,
yep. Mm.
yeah, I think it kind of depends what your relationship is like with your family. I know a lot of people who can rely on their families in times of need, and I know a lot of people who cannot, or who cannot rely on their families in times of great sadness and grief. Even if it's not like an unhealthy or dysfunctional relationship, I think sometimes, especially the older generation, doesn't quite have the concept of how to support someone going through grief. That's not like, yes, just be grateful, just be patient. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the refrain that they go back to over and over. And I'm not saying that there's no value in that. There, of course, is value in that. But sometimes when someone's going through great pain, they really need to let it out, and they really need someone to just hear them and say, I hear you. That must be very difficult. And I'm so sorry that you're going through this. How can I be there for you? Just having that kind of like open heart, I think it depends. Sometimes you will have those people in your family, and sometimes you will not. And if you have those people in your family who are going to stand with you and going to be with you, then you're very lucky. You're very, very lucky. And if you don't have that, it's also okay to find that support elsewhere. In turn, like your friends, therapist, or whatnot, and kind of accept that maybe the support that your parents give you will not be the same as the support that your friends will give you. Maybe they'll give you kind of this like pushing you to be over like positive, or pushing you to kind of get on with your life or whatever. Um, it can hurt, to be honest with you. It can hurt when people can't meet you where you are, especially the people closest to you. But I've also come to a level of acceptance in that people can't give more than they're able to give. And if, if my mom is able to give this much, then I will accept that from her. And my friend is able to give this much, and my therapist is able to give this much. All of that is okay, as long as I'm getting what I need from the different people in my life. And I don't know if that's very helpful. I don't know if that's very helpful, but I think a lot of us get frustrated when we don't find that support in our closest relationships. Um, and it's hard. It is hard to not find that. It is really hard. Um, but there's a level of contentment when you come to a point where you've accepted that people are going to give me what they are able to give me. And if I can't find it in one person, I will find it in another. Or I will find it in my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Right. Yep. Thank you, Sister Asma, for that reminder. And yeah, I think I'm for one that easily gets frustrated when I couldn't find solace in other people, and it's hard to when you become vulnerable to other people, and you just didn't get the reciprocation of the emotion that we are hoping for. But thank you, Sitasma, for the answer. That's really, really beautiful. And I like to remind everyone, you guys can actually ask questions directly to Sister Asma about the topic tonight, when grief and loss hurt you. Or also, alternatively, you can tweet your questions to the tweet, and I'll ask Sister Asma in a minute. But before we go to the questions from the audience, I have one last question. So this is about something becoming whole again. So pain, grief, and loss will always be a part of ourselves. And like you have told us before, it is really, really long process. You might not be able to actually overcome the grief even after so many years you're trying to find answers in your grief. But we cannot really get rid of the grief, the pain altogether by dismissing the existence in our life. However, I'm sure that you will agree with me that remembering the pain, the losses that we had in the past is really, really painful. And for me, it's really painful remembering and reminiscing all those pain that I had in the past. My question probably about how can we become again? How can we become whole again? At the same time, we acknowledge the existence of the past the dark past that we had.
So I'm going to challenge you a little bit on that question, if that's okay.
Yep.
I don't think we can become whole again.
Right.
That's kind of my answer. And I don't think that we should be aiming to become whole again. It's interesting. I have a chapter in my book, A Place of Refuge, called Thrive in Grief.
Mm-hmm.
And in that chapter, I talk about how a lot of people, in the years after, after I started writing and stuff, they would approach me with a similar question. How do I get over this? How do I stop this pain? How do I, or, I've been asked the question in many different forms. How do I feel whole again? I don't think that you can. I don't think that you can ever get rid of the pain or you can ever stop feeling sadness over something that happened in the past completely, right? Of course, we can get to a more emotionally healthy place. We can get to a place where we can not move on, but move forward with our lives, regain joy, regain happiness. All of those things are possible. But what is not possible is for us to get back to a place before this thing happened to us. And I don't think we're meant to. I think we are meant to experience the things that we experience so that it informs who we become in the future, so that it increases our empathy, so that it allows us to see things in a different light, from a different perspective. Those things are really important. Like, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran so many times, many times, I think it's like over 50 times, that in Jannah, there will be no grief, or no, there shall be no fear, nor shall you grieve. And so in saying that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is acknowledging that in this world, in this dunya, there will always be fear and there will always be grief. Always. Because like regardless, it can, like, there's a line I wrote in my book and I still remember it till now. Even if you're standing on your wedding day and it is the happiest day of your life, there's always something in the back of your head. Like, even if it's something as simple as, oh, this person that I loved, I wish that they were here. Or you're fearing the future, like, okay, well, how are we going to make ends meet if we have kids? There's always some sense of like either a little bit of sadness or a little bit of grief. But that's this dunya, that's the nature of this world. And for me, when I feel like I'm not whole, that fact of me feeling like I'm a little bit broken, or that like there are parts of me that are really struggling, those are the parts that connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I don't know if I'm explaining myself properly or not, but like in our sadness and in our grief, we remember that this world is not a world of perfection. This is not a world of unlimited and uninterrupted joy or bliss. This is a world of tests and trials. And yes, we aim to have, contentment, and we aim to have patience and happiness and build a life that we can be content with. But at the same time, fully acknowledging that Jannah is really the only place where we can be whole, where we can have uninterrupted joy, where we will have no more memories of our sadness and our grief, where we'll have no more fear. So I think that a lot of us push towards this goal of like being completely happy and like totally forgetting, our pain. And when it doesn't happen, we get very disappointed and we get very angry and we get very frustrated. But it's not going to happen because this is the dunya. The dunya is a place of tests and trials.
Thank you, Sister Asmaa. That's really touching. I feel really very relatable with that question, because I question myself whenever I feel bad, I feel sad. How do I become whole again? But I think to what extent, I couldn't find the answer. So thank you, Sister Asma, for the reminder, and I really hope that everyone gets the idea of that answer just now. Thank you, Sister Asma. So right now, I like to actually go to the question from the audience. I received 2 questions in the reply from the audience to the tweet that I tweeted this morning. But before that, if everyone is interested to buy the book from Sister Asma called A Temporary Gift and A Place of Refuge, you can get the book on our website, imanshop.com. Iman, IMAN, shop, SHOPPE.com, imanshop.com. The original price for A Temporary Gift is 89 ringgit 90 cent, and A Place of Refuge is 80 ringgit. But you can get 10% off by using this code New Year, NEWYEAR, New Year. You can get 10% off when you purchase A Temporary Gift and A Place of Refuge. When you check out, please insert the discount code New Year, NEWYEAR, on our website, www.imanshop.com. So please get the book. It's really interesting, and I'm sure it's really worth it with the money, inshallah. So I have 2 questions, Sister Asma. So I hope there's perhaps 10 more minutes left. So my first
can I ask you a question first?
Yes, please.
My question is, when are you guys going to invite me to Malaysia?
God, when the borders reopen, please come, Sister Asma. Yes. Oh my God, that question.
I would absolutely love to visit. It would be amazing.
I'm not sure if you can remember, but I actually invited you on our live webinar last year, but you couldn't join because you were traveling. But if we were not in the pandemic, we're surely going to invite you to be our speaker, because your content is really.
I would love to come. I'm just putting it out there so that you can keep it in mind for the future.
Yes, I'll keep your contact forever, so please don't block me after this.
Absolutely.
All right, Sister Asma, there's one question from I think it's Sister Rahma. So she asked, Sister Asma, do you think there's a stigma in grieving or expressing grief in the Muslim community? Why do you think there's a stigma, even when Quran tells stories about grieving among prophets? Why is this dissonance actually happen?
There is definitely a misunderstanding of grief in the wider Muslim community. Not everywhere and not with everyone, but I would say in the wider Muslim community, it is a taboo to express grief. And I can tell you that from personal experience that after a couple of months of me kind of still writing about my experiences, I would often get comments and messages about, don't you think that's enough? Like, that's it. Like, you shouldn't write this much about, your grief. You shouldn't really express this level of grief. Many messages over the past many years, so many messages. And it used to upset me at first. And at this point, I kind of just, I tend to ignore them. And I think people are so uncomfortable with it. But let's talk about Muslims specifically. I think that there is a misunderstanding of what it means to be patient, right? And oftentimes I myself have heard lectures and speeches and been in Islamic courses where the instructor talks about patience and holding your tongue and just kind of like being steadfast. And this is what we have, right? And being grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for everything that you have and not expressing ingratitude. And so we conflate the two. We think, okay, well, if I express my grief, then I'm not being grateful. Or if I express that I'm going through something difficult, then I'm not being patient, which is like cannot be farther from the truth. And you really don't have to look farther than the Quran. You know, that like the prophets, we're not even going to be talking about like the righteous people. We could talk about the prophets. You know, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he saw the necklace of his late wife, Khadijah, and he cried, and it was years later, and it moved him so much. Why do you think it moved him? Because he was holding on to her love and the sadness of losing her for this whole time. And this doesn't invalidate faith. This is just the human condition, that we were created in this world of tests and trials with hearts that feel very, very deeply and that feel so many things and sometimes feel so many things at once. Um, and really, the real test of faith, in my mind, is being able to hold on to your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in Islam and hold on to that faith while still going through that grief. You know, and that you frame your grief in this world view of, we live in a dunya of trials, and this thing is making me very sad, or I'm going through this intense grief, but I know that there is a purpose, and I know that inshallah in Jannah this is not going to be the case anymore. But that doesn't invalidate your faith, you know. And I just think that there's a huge misunderstanding of what patience means,
Mhm.
and that's really the core of it. And in order to address it, like, what do you really do other than showing up in your grief in a way that is authentic? And I think that's why a lot of people have, like, alhamdulillah, found a lot of solace in what I write, and in like my presence on social media, because I'm at a point now where I no longer care about those voices that say you shouldn't write about grief or whatnot, because I know myself, and I know that I think about grief in my worldview, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a plan for everything, and that so many people, and I would say especially women, some men, but especially women, really connect to what I say. And it's almost like I've given voice to things that they could never say, and they didn't know why they couldn't say them. And there's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of power in just showing up as your authentic self,
Mhm.
without kind of the filters that are unnecessary and that are actually detrimental to our health.
I really, really agree with you on that. Um, I find it hard to articulate my feelings, and I think that is something also what happened in our community, where we find it really hard to articulate our feelings and emotions so that people will not misunderstood with whatever we're trying to tell them. We actually try to feel our emotion, but it's just hard to articulate them. Thank you, Sitasma, for that.
My pleasure.
And I have one more last question from Brother Suhail. So he asked, what is the limit of grieving? So you mentioned about to feel the sadness, to feel the grief, but what is the limit to the grieving that we're experiencing? To what
Limit in
extent?
terms of
Yeah.
what? In terms of a time limit?
I think it's probably to what limit that we can accept this as a grieving period and not to over grieve.
That's an interesting question. I think that varies from person to person. I don't think there is one particular answer. And I think that we were created with different sentiments, different abilities, different like emotional dispositions. And some people are able to hold on to things inside. Some people need to express them. Some people need to grieve for a long time. Some people can grieve for a shorter time, and that's the beauty. That's I call it internal diversity, right? That we have external diversity in terms of our nationalities and ethnicities and races, but we also have internal diversity in the sense that there are people who feel things a lot more deeply and for a lot longer, and there are other people who do feel things deeply but can move forward a lot quicker, and both of them are valid. Um, and so, this question of what is the time limit? The limit does not exist. I'm laughing because it's a quote from a movie. The limit does not exist. You know, at the same time, I do want to emphasize that grieving doesn't mean you don't move forward. I'm specifically not saying moving on. I'm saying moving forward, because moving on has this thing of like just forget what happened and just move on to the next thing or the next person or whatever, right? We're not saying that. We're saying moving forward in life. And so you can be grieving, but still wake up in the morning and be productive and have relationships and do what needs to get done for yourself, for your family, right? And so let's talk about, for example, when a woman loses her husband, she has the iddah, the mourning period, right? 4 months and 10 days. And that is like the official mourning period where she shouldn't have to do anything. This is like for her. It's almost like a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for her, that this is just time for you, for yourself, right? And then after that, it's not a switch that turns off after 4 months and 10 days. Okay, we're turning off the switch. We're no longer sad. Now we're perfectly happy. It's not about the sadness, right? It's about after that period, you have to be able to stand up and now continue in life and do what physically needs to be done. You know what I mean? Like, if you're finding that you're having trouble doing that your physical abilities and your capabilities, like you're not able to move forward in that sense, then it is a problem, right? Then it is like something serious that you should consider speaking to someone about. However, if you are able to and you're able to somewhat kind of go on with life and move forward, then why are you concerned about the sadness? Why are you trying to get rid of the sadness so badly? Is it because you actually want to get rid of it, or because it's uncomfortable? It's okay to be uncomfortable with what you're feeling, and it's okay to have that sadness, because in my worldview, that has always brought me closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That has always been a means for me to really reflect and say, I'm so sad. I need Allah. Like, I need to connect with Him. I need Him to grant me relief. And so I think we're so concerned about how to get rid of these feelings that we don't realize that there's actually good can come from those feelings. But at the same time, really monitor your life and think about, is this grief turning into something more serious? Is this grief turning into depression? Is this grief turning into taking me to a place where I can no longer function? Because that is separate, right? That is something that actually has to be addressed. That's something that is not healthy, right? And so I do want to differentiate between those things, because it's very easy to cross that limit and no longer be able to function like normally in your world. And that is a cause for concern, and that is something that you need to address. And it's not about time period, right? Like, something might have happened to you 20 years ago, childhood trauma, and it's only coming up for you now for whatever reason. And so it's very hard to talk about time limits. I don't think time limits exist. I think it's just where we are in life and what that elicits in us and what that triggers in us. And when those things do come up, just have healthy ways of addressing them that are not suppressing them, right? Anything that is suppressed will come back. Anything that is suppressed will come back. And that's just, any psychologist will tell you this. It's about, whenever it does come up, learn how to address it, learn how to meet it, learn how to sit with it and be curious about it and think, well, why is this coming up for me now? And what can I do to use this for my betterment and to move my relationship forward with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sister Asmaa, for that answer and for the sharing for tonight. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope everyone gets the benefit from this session, inshallah. I think that's all that we have tonight, Sister Asma. And for the listeners, if you like to listen again to this session, inshallah, it will be released as a podcast episode in a series called In This Moment, perhaps next month in March. So please follow our social media at imanplus.com on Instagram and Twitter for more info on the podcast or on any of our products that we offer on our website, inshallah. So please follow again our Instagram and Twitter at imanplus.com. Also, if you like this content and how to address your feeling, how to find the center of the life and getting back to the right track of becoming a better servant to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have this online class titled Presence of the Heart. In this pre-recorded class, you will get motivations, insights, and tips from various speakers such as Chief Mikael Smith, Ustazah Zainab Talha, and Iman Salam. And also, this is really, really good for preparation to approach Ramadan that is just less than 50 days right now. So the price is 38 ringgit, but you can get 8 ringgit off if you use the code YES when checking out at imanplus.com. With only 30 ringgit, you'll get a lifetime access to the pre-recorded online class and a lifetime benefit as well, inshallah. And also, if you are interested to get Sister Asma books called Temporary Gift and A Place of Refuge, you can get them on our website, imanshop.com. That is imanshop.com, imanshop.com. The price is 89 ringgit 90 cent and 80 ringgit for a temporary gift and a place of refuge. But you can get 10% off when you use discount code New Year and EWYEAR when you check out. So please get those two books, the temporary gift, a place of refuge, and use New Year discount code to get 10% off. Thank you so much, Sister Asma, for your time tonight, morning in Toronto. And please, if you were to come to Malaysia, please let us know. And we are really, really happy to host you, inshallah.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yes.
Inshallah, one day that will be a reality.
Inshallah. And thank you everyone for listening to this space till the end. And till next time, take care and stay safe, everyone. Assalamualaikum. And again, thank you, Sister Asma, for your time today.
This episode of When Grief and Loss Hurt You is a collaboration between Iman Plus and Asmaa Hussein. Asmaa Hussein is the author of A Temporary Gift and Place of Refuge, published by her own publishing house, Ruqayya's Bookshelf. You can follow her at ruqayyas.bookshelf on Instagram, where she shares her stories and reflections. This episode is a part of In This Moment podcast series. This series is available on Iman Plus Spotify and Iman YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to our channels if you don't want to miss our latest episodes. For more information on the podcast or any other products from Iman Plus, please check out our social media account at imanplus.com on Instagram and Twitter, and Iman Plus on Facebook. Subscribe to our newsletter and please check out our website, imanplus.com today. Till next time, take care and stay safe.